This true story unfolded across the streets of New Orleans during 1918, bringing terror more chilling than jazz and rum could ever inspire. A mysterious killer stalked through darkness wielding an axe, establishing himself among America's most enigmatic murderers. His home invasions defied logic: no doors damaged, no windows broken, merely a precise cut through rear door panels that baffled investigators completely. Inside these violated homes, horrific bloodbaths commenced with calculated brutality that shocked even seasoned detectives. This axeman exclusively hunted Italian grocers and their families, attacking solely during nighttime hours while unsuspecting victims rested peacefully in their beds. Each victim suffered brutal butchering with surgical precision, and investigators discovered the grotesque detail that their own household axe frequently became the murder weapon, abandoned deliberately at every crime scene like a macabre signature. The killer's methods were so unusual that police struggled to understand his motives. He moved through the French Quarter like a phantom, selecting his targets with disturbing accuracy. Italian grocers lived in constant fear, yet the killer seemed to know exactly when families would be most vulnerable. His ability to enter homes without detection suggested either supernatural powers or intimate knowledge of his victims' routines. The precision of his attacks and the deliberate use of victims' own tools created a psychological terror that went far beyond simple murder. Detective reports from the time describe crime scenes so horrific that seasoned officers requested transfers rather than continue working the case. The axeman had arrived in New Orleans, and no one felt safe anymore. Terror coursed through New Orleans like wildfire across entire neighborhoods, transforming the vibrant city into a place of shadows and whispers. Petrified citizens maintained sleepless vigils throughout endless nights, jumping at every creak and sound. Frantic parents positioned shotguns nearby for protection, while certain households organized sleeping rotations to ensure someone always watched for the lurking murderer who seemed to strike without warning. The Italian community became particularly isolated, with many families considering fleeing the city entirely. Grocery stores closed early, and those brave enough to remain open did so with armed guards. Children were kept indoors after sunset, and the normally bustling streets of the French Quarter fell eerily quiet as darkness approached. Then came the letter that would elevate this fear into enduring folklore, correspondence seemingly authored from hell's depths that arrived at the Times-Picayune newspaper office. This killer audaciously taunted police authorities while announcing his next planned assault for a particular evening in March. Yet he proclaimed mercy for any residents where live jazz music played continuously throughout the night, creating an impossible choice between silence and survival. During the designated night, New Orleans transformed into something unprecedented, an entire city throbbing with musical energy as brass bands performed in countless homes and dance halls packed with terror-stricken crowds seeking melodic sanctuary. From mansions in the Garden District to shotgun houses in Treme, every neighborhood echoed with trumpets, trombones, and desperate melodies. The killer had unwittingly created the most massive jazz festival in the city's history, born entirely from fear. Many believe the jazz strategy succeeded spectacularly, that designated night passed without casualties, marking the first time in months that no blood was spilled by the axeman's blade. The entire city celebrated what seemed like a victory against supernatural evil, with newspapers proclaiming that music had conquered terror. Jazz musicians became unlikely heroes, and the night became legendary in New Orleans folklore. However, weeks afterward, just as citizens began to believe they had defeated their tormentor, he emerged again to butcher additional victims with renewed savagery before mysteriously disappearing forever. His final attack seemed even more brutal, as if he were punishing the city for its defiance. Then, as suddenly as he had appeared, the axeman vanished completely from New Orleans, leaving behind only questions and traumatized survivors. The axeman evaded capture completely, leaving investigators with no identity, no comprehensible motive, no physical evidence, only widespread community fear and jazz melodies that continued resonating through New Orleans' shadowy streets. Police files remained open for decades, filled with theories but no concrete answers. Some suspected he had died or moved to another city, while others believed he had simply returned to whatever dark realm had spawned him. Even today, more than a century later, some theorize the axeman transcended human nature entirely, representing something far more sinister than a mere serial killer. Others insist he continues wandering these ancient streets, listening intently and awaiting perfect silence before resuming his deadly work. In New Orleans, where the supernatural feels close to the surface, many still play music late into the night, just in case the axeman is still listening, still waiting, still hungry for the sound of silence.